Beautiful people, welcome back to EP. It's your girl Elda. I thank you for tuning in once again. Just before we do continue our conversation of men need love too, I need you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Be sure to turn on your post notifications, and I look forward to engaging with you in the comments. Let's get started. Beautiful people, welcome back to EP. I am your dopest host, Elda, and we are here with Mr. Gordi Metezier. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. You guys, I'm gonna let him introduce himself because if I do it, we will be here all day. This is a friendship of over what, 15 years?
Maybe longer.
Maybe longer. So, Mr. Metezier, tell us who you are, what you do, and he only got Facebook because he don't do Instagram, but we're not gonna be petty.
I do have an Instagram, but I just started it.
Oh, you gonna use it?
I don't know yet. I'm getting used to things. So, my name's Gordi Metezier. I'm married, have two beautiful children, little girl, little boy. Right now, me and my wife is sort of in a transition period right now, trying to get back closer to family, so trying to move out of the Midwest, more down to the dirty South. So
welcome back home. Yeah. I ain't gonna be petty, y'all. I'm telling y'all, I ain't gonna be petty.
Yeah.
And a unique factor about my friend, he's a pastor.
I pastored, but I wouldn't give myself that title yet.
Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and get this conversation started.
Okay.
When I spoke to you about having this conversation of men need love too,
right,
what was your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts was, why she asking me? But then I started really thinking about things, but then marriage came into the segment of my thoughts because when you're talking about love, marriage is always on top of that list on love, you know, so that was kind of the first thing that I thought about was just me specifically in the marriage that I am in right now.
Why did, that's unique, that's funny you say that, because marriage came up, but why? Why was that the first thing to come up?
It's a good question. I think of Christ, because without his marriage to the church, I wouldn't be the man that I am today, you know, and I look at just his sacrificial love and the way he lived a life out of love, and the way he just carried himself as a man, as a God. I thought about my marriage because I want to live my life where it's sacrificial. You know, I want to live my life where the unity of myself and my wife is sacrificial. I mean, we're sacrificing for each other to make things work. So that was the biggest reason why I thought of marriage.
So when that's beautiful because you have people in our age as millennials. They don't really think about that. So with being a millennial and being married and with the roles and what society put on men today, how do you balance everything without losing your mind?
You mentioned society, and I think that's one thing that sort of kills the word marriage, you know what I mean? And you look at what society says about marriage now, because you look at kids or adults in our age, they don't want to get married, you know what I mean? They're afraid of marriage, or they look at what other couples go through, they look at what society is saying about marriage. But for me personally, being in this millennial stage of marriage, I was always a person that thought outside of the box. And what I mean thinking outside of the box, I don't really portray things to the point where I'm looking at other people and how other people interact with certain aspects of life and then put it on myself. I can't really look at someone's marriage and say, okay, they're struggling, so this is something I don't want to do. That's how a lot of people look at marriage, you know what I mean? It's hard. It's something that takes sacrifice. So I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm putting myself in a position where I'm kind of connecting with other people and what they're going through, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So what boundaries have you set or discipline have you put in place to help you that you believe can help other men out there not to compare themselves? Because when you look at what this generation is going through, there's always a comparison taking place. And I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like a lot of men hide their true feelings, hide, their vulnerability because of that comparison, because they don't want women to take away from their masculinity. So what discipline have you put in place that helps you, that you feel like will be beneficial to another brother that's watching? You
can even connect that to it's kind of trending now when you're looking at Sierra and Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And the whole Future deal. And when you're looking at social media, a lot of people are saying that a lot of men are not in tune to what Russell Wilson is doing towards Sierra, because he's openly loving his wife, you know what I mean? He's openly just being vulnerable about the way he's feeling about how he wants to deal with his wife, his significant other. And I've seen a lot of people are more in tune of the whole Future deal of it, because Future is not really vulnerable when it comes to, well, I'm not even going to say that. I don't know Future personally, but the way society is looking now is like, okay, I can't outwardly express how I feel about my wife because I'm going to look soft, or I'm going to look weak to the alpha male, whatever you want to call it. But for me personally, pertaining to your question, I would say just the source of your being, like what's your source? And what I mean by that is, my source now, of course, is Christ.
Yeah.
But what's the source of the inner being thing that you turn to when you feel like you can't connect with your significant other? When you feel like you can't connect with this world, or what this world is throwing at you, what do you turn to? Because a lot of times us men, we feel like we have no one to turn to. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we can't turn to our women because we may feel like we're coming out soft, or we can't turn to a friend because we feel like we need to be alpha. We don't need to receive help from others. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the biggest failures that us as human beings utilize today, that mentality where you feel like you don't need people. Like, you ever heard someone say, I don't need people, I'm going to do this myself. You know what I mean? I don't need people. At some point in life, you're going to need someone. You know what I mean? So what's the source of your inner being? What do you turn to when you need that help?
Ooh, what is the source?
I wish you like...
Y'all, the preacher side of me is like, can we expand on that? Praise you, Jesus.
Let's expand on that.
Listen, we would be here all night. We would be here all night. And I love what you said, that there is a point where you're going to need somebody. Can you share with us a time where you came to that moment like, I need somebody?
In my marriage, my wife and I, we've been married for 5 years now, going on 6.
Congratulations.
We've known each other for about 7 years. There was a point in our marriage, and I like this goes back to society, ways of thinking. My wife and I, we never lived together prior to marriage, and it got to the point where we got married. We started living together, and things completely changed. Things completely changed. And what I mean by things completely changing, I mean like space. I mean just the aspects of someone just being there all the time. And going back to this question of something that I needed and how did I turn to the source. When I got married, my way of thinking, because we got married, I wouldn't say pretty young, but we was in our early 20s. Mm-hmm. My way of thinking was my wife needs to be that person that satisfies everything in my living being. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is, like, she had to be there for me physically, mentally, emotionally. You know what I mean? And that there was one point in my marriage where I felt like I wasn't getting that from my wife. You know what I mean? I felt like she wasn't there physically. I felt like she wasn't there emotionally. You know what I mean? And it brought a spot in my life where I was very, very weak. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I felt like she's my wife. I should be able to go to her about these things. You know, right. And I should, but I depended on her too much. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? She was my dependence when it came to me needing something. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Out of life, and I think God had to break me down to the point where I had to realize, yes, my wife needs to be there for me, but she shouldn't be that first source. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is,
y'all listening?
What I mean by that is, like, if my wife is not there for me physically, you know what I mean, and I need my wife's touch, I need my wife's whatever it may be, mm-hmm. and I feel like she's not giving it to me the way that I need it, mm-hmm. you know what I mean? Then what should I turn to? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. A lot of people turn to pornography. A lot of people turn to other people. A lot of people turn into whatever it may be. You know what I mean? And I think that's where we get to a point where we get lost, because everything is not going to bring you that satisfying feeling that you need. You know what I mean? Everything is not going to satisfy your soul the way you need your soul to be satisfied. And I think that's why God had to break me to the point where, hey, Gordi, like, yes, your wife's here for these reasons, but I need to be that first person that you turn to, because your wife is not going to be your eternity of satisfaction. You know what I mean? Your wife is not going to be your eternity of physicality. You know what I mean? Your wife's not going to be the one that's going to be there for you emotionally. Turn to me. You know what I mean? And when he broke me down to the point where he had to be that first, that last, that everything in my life, I saw steps in my marriage that just flourished. You know what I mean? It flourished because I wasn't nagging my wife because I needed something.
It changed your perspective.
It changed my perspective because I had a source to turn to. I mean, and that source elevated me to the point where I was able to love my wife unconditionally. You know what I mean? I was able to catch my wife's eyes where if she needed me physically, mentally, emotionally, I was there, because I wasn't drained. I didn't expect too much from her. You know what I mean? I expected it out of God, because he said he's the one that needs to give me that.
Right. So after all of that, it basically pushed you to appreciate your wife even more?
Even more. Like never before. And I can be vulnerable to you guys now. Like, there was a point in my marriage where I wasn't seeking divorce, but it played a part in my mind where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not happy. You know what I mean? I wasn't happy because my expectations for my wife exceeded the expectation that Christ should be for me. You know what I mean? And when I slowed that process down,
somebody get the usher,
when I slowed that process down and I allowed God to exceed my expectations, I was able to slow my wife down. I was able to.
And I don't want to put no gender role on this.
Please do.
No, because I believe women struggle with that too, where we do go into relationships with unrealistic expectations. You understand what I'm saying? Because if everything I just heard you say is you had an expectation, you had a standard that you were expecting her to meet. But in a sense, it was unrealistic because she couldn't meet that until you came to a place of contentment with what you had going on.
Correct.
And in order for you to come to that place of contentment, you had to go back to Christ, which is your source. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of us say that we need these things. You understand? But we are not willing to go back to the source, but we keep turning to the world or worldly things or people, and it's like...
Which is not going to grant you satisfaction.
It's not going to grant you satisfaction.
It's temporary. You know what I mean? I can go smoke a cigarette outside, but I'm still going to feel the same.
And you can go get high, but you're going to come back down. You can get drunk, but you're going to get sober.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So, but for men, I feel like it's much deeper. It's harder because you guys are pushed not to show emotions. You guys are pushed not to communicate. You're pushed to where you guys just have to take it and go. You feel what I'm saying? So even in the midst of you going back to the source, it required vulnerability.
It does.
It required you to be transparent.
It does.
And it required you to acknowledge where you were so that you can heal.
It does.
Listen, y'all. Baby, when I say we can go deep, we can go deep. But right before we do continue this conversation, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is sponsored by Evolve to Empower, building confidence while enhancing self-love and self-worth. For more information, visit them at www.evolvetoempower.com. Are You Okay, Inc.? Mental health is real. Stand in your truth. Join these ladies by following them on Instagram at Are You Okay, as they encourage and empower people through this journey called life. We thank you for your sponsorship. Now let's get back to our show.
Welcome back. If you are just now tuning in, we are here with Mr. Gordi Metezier, and we are continuing the conversation of Men Need Love too. Listen, we left off with vulnerability, acknowledgement, transparency, and coming to that place of contentment, which is your source is Jesus Christ. Now, being married, how has the love of your wife altered you? Has it altered you? And did it alter you good or bad?
It was good. Of course it was good, because I was transparent with you guys when I said that my mindset in the past was divorce. And to remind you now, this is like a good 2 years into our marriage, and we haven't been married that long, because you would think 5 years is a long time, but no, you have been married for 40, 50, 60 years. And I feel like, based off that question, when I said it's good, because when my mind was seeking that divorce standpoint, my wife was the one that said no. You know, my wife was the one.
Straight up.
My wife was the one.
Straight up. Sis said no.
My wife was the one that had to check me, to check myself, and not exceed those expectations towards her, and find the cross. And what I mean by that is, because of her willingness, I was able to check myself as a man to find my source. Because I shouldn't have to put all that weight onto my wife. You know what I mean?
Wait, say that again. Say that again. Say that again.
I shouldn't have to put all of that weight onto my wife, because I'm not allowing her to grow. I'm not allowing her to flourish when my expectations, like I said earlier, just exceeded her rather than Christ. So I would say it was good, because I was able to challenge myself as a man to find my source, so that I can find that satisfaction in an eternity standpoint rather than temporarily.
So through that, you've been challenged. How has her love, how has her affirmations helped you through that process? Because you were challenged, so we definitely see the, I'm gonna say alpha female side, but through the nurturing side with her love, her affirmation, and you know, being submissive, how has that helped you throughout the process?
It helped me because she was open-minded. And when I say open-minded, like when you talk about that vulnerability stage, you want to be able to talk to your significant other about anything. I can come to my wife about anything that's going on in my life, and I think that's the standpoint in relationships where I would say people miss. If I'm able to speak to my wife and say, hey, I'm not feeling okay about A, B, and C. What's A, B, and C? Okay, I feel like I can't play my video game. Let's keep it surface level for the surface level people. Right. If I feel like I can't play my video games when I want to play my video games, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the reasoning behind me not being able to play my video games? And I want to go over surface level too, if you're okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, you know me, we can go deep, honey.
We want to be vulnerable enough to a standpoint where we're able to come to our significant others about anything that's in our minds. You know what I mean? And I feel like when you're at that stage in your relationship, it brings peace of mind. It brings trust. It brings a lot of things into your marriage or relationship or whatever it may be, where you're just vulnerable to the point where you're comfortable. You can be yourself. You can be yourself to your significant other with no strings attached and no boundaries because you love this person.
Exactly. And the vows that you took for better or for worse. And I kind of want to stress on that. That is something I do encourage anybody that's received any type of advice from me, whether it comes to friendship, relationship. I like to do this thing called honesty hour, you guys. And in that honesty hour is where you're able to talk to your significant other about whatever it is that you're dealing with. But instead of nagging, instead of using that as to hit below the belt, it is a place where you can seek to understand what your significant other is saying or what they're requesting of you so that you guys can come to a common ground and move forward. Because one of the things that I've also realized is that a lot of men are in some relationships and where they do not have that atmosphere to be vulnerable, where, you know, their masculinity is attacked. You know, oh, like you're weak, you soft, you this, you that. You get what I'm saying? Because of most women, let's keep it real, honey. Let's keep it real. Us alpha females, we can be. No, I'm real now. I'm real now because I know where I came from.
Right.
I know my mouth. I know what I've been delivered from. You understand what I'm saying? And one thing I always say is, in your relationship, in your friendship, you eat the fruit of your lips. So whatever it is that you're speaking over your friend, your boo, your busted baby, your husband, your wife, or you know, whatever it is, that's exactly what you're going to reap. So if you keep saying he ain't ish, she ain't ish, then that's what you're going to get. If you keep saying, oh, she this, she that, that's what you're going to get. So it's like, where are you nourishing or speaking life into that relationship? Because my thing is, if you don't see me in a certain light, then there's no need for you to be with me. You understand what I'm saying? So, and I would like for you to share that. Like, how do you and your wife, especially being millennials, how do you and your wife affirm one another? How do you guys encourage one another, especially in those weak moments? I think I need to bring sis on too. Hold on. But how do you guys, you know, build each other up in moments like that? Especially, you know, we have that moment where we just like, I really want to tell you about yourself, but I love Jesus too much not to. So how do you?
Everybody's different, and I encourage couples to find what's different my wife can't come to me after a disagreement. Don't just throw it in my face. Give me some time. Like, my wife knows, like, give me a few minutes, give me a few hours, and then let me collect my thoughts. Let's talk about this later. She's more, let's do it now. You know what I mean?
I like it.
And if it's let's do it now, I'll pinpoint some things that she can think about before we talk about it, so that we can both be on the same page about whatever it is that we disagreed about.
So y'all found a communication that works for you guys.
It was something that worked for us, because she's right on it. Like, if we disagreed about something about our kids, because, you know, we want to be parents that raise our kids in a certain type of way and be on the same page about that. So if we're disagreeing about that and then it brings forth an argument, she will want to get on that argument now. Let's talk about it now.
Let's talk about it now. She said she ain't ready. I see you, sis.
But I'm more of a, let me collect my thoughts and we can talk about this later. Because I'm a thinker. Like, I love to think about things before I articulate whatever it may be, and then we can go forth with the conversation. And I think that kind of slowed down the atmosphere in our household, where we're not screaming at each other, where we're not argumentative to the point where things are just shouted out without even thinking about it. You know what I mean? So I would just encourage people to just find their niche on what works for you, because what works for us is not going to work. And that's what I meant earlier, because everybody's not the same. You know what I mean? So you have to find out what works for you as a couple. And I wouldn't even, because I know people throw out that communication is key. Communication is good, but if you're not able to trust your significant other, if you're not able to be vulnerable with your significant other,
or understanding,
what's there to communicate about? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm not able to come to you about anything, if I'm not being able to be vulnerable with you and come to you about anything, or there's not that trust level in our relationship where I can say, hey, this was on my mind, this was going on, then there is no communication. You know what I mean? So find that vulnerability. Be vulnerable with your significant other. And if you're a person where you feel like you're shut off in your relationship, where you don't like hearing your significant other, like, maybe there's some things that you need to reevaluate, because there's something for everyone. So that's the biggest piece.
Well, there you have it, Mr. Gordi Metezier, aka Pastor Gordi. Pastor Gordi, y'all. We're gonna go ahead and give you the floor, and I want you to go ahead and give a brother, a sister, whoever, any advice when it comes to the topic of men we love too. Whatever's laid on your heart, just go ahead and give them advice. Take us home.
I'm not going to speak for the sisters. I'm just going to go straight forth and talk to my brothers. Find your source, and I want to encourage you to find your source. And I'm not going to speak on Christ, because, like the Bible says, like, God has made himself known to everyone. So if you're not in that level of spirituality where you believe in God, you know what I mean? God will find you. He will connect with you. But that source, like, even if it's not Christ, you know what I mean? Do you have a father figure? Do you have a mentor? Do you have a pastor, someone you can turn to for advice, so that you're not exceeding those expectations to your significant other? And I'm not trying to give any excuses or any room for your significant other. Basically what I'm saying is, like, there's a point where you can't really put so much on your significant other. There's a point where you can't really expect so much from your significant other. So when you get yourself together, when you get your mental state together, your spiritual state together, with your physical state together, you're able to love your significant other in a way that you would want love your significant other. So find your source where you're able to just turn to and be relieved and get filled, so that you're able to love your wife or your significant other unconditionally.
There you have it, guys. Thank you once again for tuning in to EP, where conversations for the mature take place. I'm your dopest host, Elda. Until next Wednesday, I want you to remember that you have victory on every side.